Siddharth. From last 1.5 years, forum seminar, we will have a registration from 4 to 4:30 and we start sharp at 4:30. Again today we are keeping up this good tradition so that everything becomes predictable. There is always game theory. आधा घंटा लेट होगा इसलिए आधे घंटे बाद आना, आधे घंटे बाद आना इसलिए आधे घंटे लेट शुरू करना पड़ेगा. So on and so forth. So thank you everyone. Myself, I'm Uttam Bagri, I'm Secretary of the BSc Brokers Forum. The topic today is FATCA, CR reporting, basically income tax rules. This is not meant to be a very deep, in-depth analysis and the technicalities and nitty-gritties, just to give a general overview on what is what's the requirement in us. So that's what we'll focus on. We have Mr. Kriyan from BDO, who are the experts, if we can say, on this topic. This is a fairly new topic and the law is also changing dramatically, so let's see what will the final structure be, but we'll try to understand the law as it stands today, what we understand. So I request Kanji to kindly come on the stage and join us. We also have Harinbhai Mehta, a fellow board member, fellow stockbroker who has been involved in FATCA matters. We call it FATCA, but actually Income Tax Rules 114. And let me confess, in this matter, Harin and I are andho mein kana raja, kind of. So we may not necessarily be the perfect authorities on this topic, but we have tried to study it as much as we can and try to give an understanding on this to the members. Just a brief background. What is this all about? Throughout the world, all regulators, the governments are coming together to crack down on black money. Is देश का पैसा उस देश में, उस देश का पैसा इस देश में, so on and so forth. So internationally now they are having an agreement कि भाई एक दूसरे का जो clients का जो residents का business है, please एक दूसरे को report करेंगे. So there is one law called FATCA which is of US. There is another agreement between the OECD countries, which is MCAA, I think, some agreement again. Multi-competent authority agreement. Sorry, I keep on getting confused. Where it's all about sharing information. The world moves on calendar year basis. So what is envisaged is for all the non-residents who deal with certain class of people in the country, every year we will give a consolidated data to our country, and our country will distribute it to the rest of the world. Similarly, the rest of the world will be taking information of Indians and giving it to our country. अभी इंडिया में information कौन collect करेगा? That was the question. Because से नया law pass करो, नए rules pass करो. Income Tax Act already has powers to ask for information. So let's say एक आप CBDT को देते हैं. And income tax is above all regulators, kind of, if you can loosely put it this way. So instead of empowering SEBI, RBI, IRDA all separately, they said we'll get income tax to issue rules, and accordingly we will get the information. Now these rules are issued by CBDT. So, and when we talk about these rules, सब लोग बोलते हैं इसमें ये SEBI को ये करना चाहिए, SEBI को वो करना चाहिए. Because obviously he is my regulator. But there is nothing SEBI can do about it. The only person who can interpret the rules, the only person who can, only entity or the authority is the CBDT itself, the Income Tax Department. The Income Tax Department has set up a committee on this matter, and BSc Brokers Forum is one of the members of the committee. So they do listen to us, and we'll try to implement whatever changes we can bring in, we can bring in. One more beautiful thing about this rule, different, is this is an international law. So अपने बोलते गवर्नमेंट को बहुत हमको रिलैक्सेशन दिया जाए, तो it may not happen because the same rules or the same laws are applicable to hundreds of countries in the world. So if you notice, if those who have studied a bit of this, they have defined something called depository institution. In the Indian context, depository institutions are NSDLs. But for the purpose of this law, depository institution means banks. Okay, so again, the terminology is different. Brokers are called investment entities to some extent, maybe some activities of custodial institutions. So it's not that simple. Similarly, if somebody has had the courage to read the law, the way it's written, the rules, it is not the usual way Indian rules are written. So lots of upaniche, it gets pretty confusing after some time. But that cannot be, of course, an excuse for not reading any rules. So that part is also something that we all need to do. Again, as BSc Brokers Forum, whenever we have been asked a question, इसमें क्या होता है, आपकी क्या opinion है? So as association, we said, हमारा कोई opinion नहीं है. ये rules पढ़ लो. Okay, I think आपके सवाल का जवाब rules के इस part में. That's where we are stopping. क्योंकि कल का आप बोल देंगे, तुमने कहा था यार ये गड़बड़ हो गई. इस बारे में हम कुछ कह ही नहीं. And as I have mentioned, हमें कहने का right भी नहीं है. Even the experts seem to be divided. कल को then large accountancy firm, somebody quoted say कि ये applicable ही नहीं है. Another accountancy firm says नहीं ये applicable नहीं है. So a little confusion will continue for some time till clarity emerges, because again, if the CBDT or income tax department needs to issue clarification, again they have to look at international practices, right? Further, this rules is a mixture of FATCA requirements and MCA requirements. So दोनों का mixture okay आ गया, तो they are pretty similar, but again, even a FATCA, it's not only FATCA, that is not only US, it is rest of the world. Today we are dividing a seminar into two parts. Part one is due diligence process में क्या करना है, कि भाई करना, see at the end of the day as members, वो सब करना क्या है, ठीक है, law आ गया कुछ करना, but what am I supposed to do? NRI client का काम बंद कर दूँ, चालू रखूँ, what am I required to do? We're going to touch upon that part. And then part two में we'll argue कि मुझ पे applicable है कि नहीं, ठीक है, because if we start मुझ पे applicable है कि नहीं तो क्या 2 घंटा we will go on and on, and that is how we propose to do it. So we'll do a due diligence. This is again very, very basic. Please don't get into too much technicalities. Non-participating financial institution and excluded accounts, वो सब पे जाओगे तो this is not the plan for today. The plan is just to touch upon the various aspects, and because some of us would be extremely thorough with this topic, and some of us would have just come here कि बस पता कुछ हो रहा है फोरम में, पता करके आए फटका क्या चलेगा, right? So I'm trying to target both the audience, but we have an expert here. Pranav ji, senior was going to come, but unfortunately दोपहर में he fell seriously sick and he had to excuse, and but we have a backup who is equally competent. So let's see. Would you like to do a small presentation? Okay. So I'll straight come on the duty process. I think I'll sit down after the permission. Just to get a feel, how many of us have a reasonable understanding of the rules? How many of us do not have any reasonable understanding of the rules? Okay, by that I am assuming कि आप एक बार में पढ़ के नहीं आए, ठीक है, चलो. So I'll accordingly, as per the audience requirement, I'll change my plan. Income tax rules में 3 पार्ट है. Rule 114G, F 114FGH. Okay, for on the various pages of Google website, this is what it looks like. There are 3 parts of the rule. Rule 114F is all done. I have not made a PPT because seeing copy paste it will be really messy. So 114F has all sorts of definitions, which will really affect the applicability and other aspects. 114G has what is the kind of information we are supposed to keep, and 114H is keep and report. 114H is what is the kind of due diligence process we have to follow, plus a few other things. So, to put it very simply, if any of your clients are non-residents, you're supposed to report certain details about those clients to income tax department. It doesn't mean तो आप काम कर सकते हो नहीं कर सकते हो. That is, आप जो काम करना है करो, भैया बस रिपोर्ट करते हो. This is the major basic requirement from these rules. So now what data you have to report is two categories. One is US clients, another is, I use the word rest of the world. For US clients, it has already become applicable from 30th June 2014. सवा साल पहले. For rest of the world, it becomes applicable from 31st December 2015. That is after 3-4 months. This is the basic difference. Right now, it has become reporting requirements have become applicable only for US clients, and rest of the world starts from 31st December. Again, now they have the concept of pre-existing accounts and new accounts. Which is a pre-existing account? In case of US, all the accounts opened with you as on 30th June 14 are pre-existing US. And 1st July 14 के बाद जो भी खाता खुले, that's new US. In case of rest of the world, all accounts existing as on 31st December 2015 आने वाला, that will be pre-existing. This pre-existing बहुत मतलब ये तो already नहीं है, as on that date. उसके बाद जो खुलेगा, that will be new for rest of the world. The requirements for pre-existing and new, बोले कि pre-existing में तुमको ये सब करना है. So effectively for US वालों का इनका ऐसा है. Here an example, if you have a UK client who is trading today and tomorrow he closes account and runs away. So 31st December को he is a nobody. That account is closed, he doesn't exist. So उसका कोई reporting कुछ भी नहीं है. So for the rest of the world, everything starts from 31st December as it's a new dawn of the day. Again, as I initially said, I am Andhome Kana Raja. I repeat that term because people ask me for advice, and so I request Priyanji ki any place I seem to go wrong, please point out. Now, so right now, जो existing time period है only US का चलेगा. Now what are you? These concepts are एक बार कोई समझा देना, then rules become much easier to read. So I'm just doing that. So now what are you required to report? You are required to report the client's name, address, his TIN, जो भी international TIN है, the equivalent of his PAN number, his date of birth and his place of birth. These are 5 things you are required to report immediately. In round 1. In round 2, not only this, you'll also have to start reporting the transactions of the client. Transactions in, मतलब ये नहीं कि 100 lakhs ले या 100 lakhs बेचा ना, total in terms of value, in USD terms. That is what is required. That will be required. Now for the year 2014, you have to upload only the name, address, date of birth, place of birth, the account code and the account balance. Now what will be the account code in our case? UCC. In case of DP? Demat account number. Now, I'm digressing a bit. But by 1st January 2016, Income Tax Department is going to come out with a FAQ. And they have asked market for feedback. That will be waiting. Now, if I turn and say that PAN number is the UCC in case of any capital market activity, would that be fair? Yeah. Because मेरा client code PAN number है, अब उसके 3 UCC और 4 Demat account है, I don't care. So we can go as per that. Which is one of the requirement is if a person holds multiple accounts, we are supposed to sum it. That is provided you can do it easily. In case of stockbroking, everybody has a PAN number, except extreme cases like CK, which is definitely restricted. So PAN number maybe is the UCC. So when we these are the some of what I say are also questions that we have to ask ourselves. So in case of individual accounts, we have to load all these data, account code, the account balance. Now they want the balance as on 30th June 2014 and they require the balance as on 31st December 2014. Now what is the balance in our case? In case of stockbrokers, it will be trial balance कि जो लेजर में क्रेडिट डेबिट है वो अपने बेनी अकाउंट में उसका माल जो पड़ा है वो because that's अपने अकाउंट्स में सिक्योरिटी लेजर होगा डीमैट लेजर होगा and third is as a DP अपने डीमैट अकाउंट में जो माल पड़ा है वो so that will be a balance. The sum of these three would probably be the balance of that account with you. अब यहाँ डेबिट है वहाँ क्रेडिट है तो क्या पकड़ूँ? I'm not getting into that because again those are nitty-gritties. Okay, but right now we are concerned with the trial balance or the valuation statement as on 30th June 14 and 31st December 14. उसके अंदर आगे जाके they have given relaxation for certain amounts. I am coming to it. For the year 15, we'll have to give transaction details also for the Americans, for the US clients. So, I'm repeating the dates, please bear with me. 30th June 14, we are just interested in holding kitna. 31st December 14, we are just interested in holding kya hai. But for the financial year 15, 1st January 15 से 31st December 15 जो चालू है, we will be interested in 31st December 15 को होल्डिंग किया है और साल भर में ट्रांजैक्शन किया हुआ for US clients. Why only US clients? Because rest of the world is going to start soon. And for calendar year 16, we have to do for Americans as well as Australians. So this is the requirement or expectation from us. So by chance you are convinced कि अपने ऑफिस में एक भी US client नहीं है, मालूम है अपने को यार, कि अपने 40 client है, इसमें से 2 UK के बाकी कोई नहीं है, then frankly you can stand a bit relaxed. But if that's not the case, then you have to continue. You have to get this data.
We'll differ a little bit on that front, that if you have only local clients based on your understanding, that you can relax. Basically, you will still be required to do a lot of monitoring and due diligence. Maybe I'll cover that aspect a little bit later when Uttam ji is finished.
See, मैं जो भी बोला, it turned out to be wrong after some time. So please. So when now, अब आप बोलोगे यार सामने वाले का टिन नंबर तो मेरे पास है नहीं, सामने वाले का डेट ऑफ बर्थ तो अपने पास होता है, because everybody has PAN, so all the date of birth is with us, but we don't have the टिन. Though again the rules envisage some parts to be done by electronic search and some parts to be done by a paper search. So the rules kindly say that if the TIN number is by electronic search means अपना back office and the KRA system, right? And paper search means KYC form और सारा correspondence जो अपने इसके अंदर पड़ा हुआ है, फाइलों में पड़ा हुआ है, पता नहीं किस ऑफिस से किस कोने में और 10 KYC forms लाएंगे. So for TIN and date of birth, we have to do an electronic search. If it's not there in the back of the system, you don't need to upload in the first instance. So you upload just in case of individual name, you would have an address, TIN optional. TIN if it's available in your back office, you load. If not, you don't. TIN means जो भी जिस देश का पैन नंबर का equivalent जो भी that's a TIN. Date of birth if you have or and place of birth again is optional. If it is because place of birth कोई भी back office में capture करता है अपने, ठीक है, very large brokers would do it. We are not doing it. So it is not envisaged कि सारे फाइल में place of birth check करो. By chance में लिखा हुआ है, पासपोर्ट का जरूरत पड़ा हुआ तो अपने back office के अंदर है तो place of birth भी load करना है, वरना we can leave it blank for the first 2014 का data. Now all statements for a calendar year has to be filed by 31st May of next year. तो 2015 में जो भी करेंगे 31st May 2016 में लोड करना है and so on and so forth. Again, in terms of procedure, the rules envisage that the regulator will specify the procedure or the manner in which the data will be handled and awaited. This whole thing is awaited. I think after the FAQ of January 2016 and other regulators like IRDA and RBI and SEBI will start issuing their own directions or specification of procedures. So we'll have to wait for that. And in terms of transactions, I'm just touching upon it. I'm not. We can't go further because still not clear. Transactions. The rules envisage transactions to include interest, dividend, अदर इनकम, सेल प्रोसीड्स, रिडेम्पशन प्रोसीड्स। तो जो भी अपने पास अकाउंट्स मेंटेन्ड है उसके अंदर ये जो भी ट्रांजैक्शन हुए, दैट ट्रांजैक्शन हैज टू बी रिपोर्टेड एट द एंड ऑफ द ईयर ऑन अ ग्रॉस बेसिस। Focusing again on duty, what are we supposed to do? Now all the accounts are divided into high value and low value and negligible value, if we can put. For Americans, high value is more than 1 million. Low value is $50,000 to 1 million, and everything else is negligible value. I mean, it's not defined that way, I'm just using this term. In case of rest of the world, high value is more than 1 million and low value is less than 1 million. So the rules kind of indicate कि less than 50,000 in USA और report नहीं किया तो ठीक है यार। अमेरिकन में छोटे मोटे मेरे को दिमाग नहीं लगा। The rules seem to indicate the rest of the world ₹1 में तो report करना पड़ेगा। Again, we'll ask for clarification on this, but this is what the rules seem to read. For low value existing clients, सबसे पहले फर्स्ट वर्ड नेग्लिजिबल वैल्यू, आपने ट्रायल बैलेंस लिया एज ऑन 30 जून 2014, सारे क्लाइंट $50,000 मतलब 30 लाख के आसपास, सबका होल्डिंग वैल्यूएशन ले लिया, बेनिफिशियरी होल्डिंग का, मार्जिन होल्डिंग का, लेजर का। एक भी क्लाइंट 30 लाख के ऊपर किसी का जमा नहीं है, चैप्टर क्लोज। कुछ करना नहीं है, आप माफ हो, बिकॉज अभी खाली यूएस में चेक करना है करंट में, तो कोई कुछ अड़ता नहीं है काम खत्म। नाउ सो ऑल द स्मॉल गाइज वी कैन इग्नोर। तो अपना बोलो मेरे लाखों क्लाइंट है, वह कितने क्लाइंट है जो 30 लाख से ज्यादा क्रेडिट होंगे? 100, 200, 500। तो काम इतना ज्यादा नहीं है जितना अपने क्लेम कर देंगे, अरे कैसे करेंगे, क्या करेंगे, ये करेंगे, वो करेंगे। नाउ इफ इट इज बिटवीन $50,000 and $1 million, $1 million मतलब ऑलमोस्ट 6 करोड़ रुपया, 60 रुपीज के हिसाब से मैं जस्ट अप्रॉक्सीमेटली बोल रहा हूँ। सो फॉर दोज क्लाइंट्स वी हैव टू डू अ ड्यू डिलिजेंस सर्च, एंड फॉर दोज विद मोर देन 1 million वी हैव टू डू एनहांस सर्च फॉर इंडिविजुअल। नाउ पीपल, या इतना बड़ा 6 करोड़ वाला मैं आपको नहीं, चलो मैं निकलो इस सेमिनार से इंशाल्लाह, बट गलती से भी क्रेडिट रहेगा तो धंधा थोड़ी छोड़ोगे, सो माइट एज वेल कीप इट राइट। एनीवेज, फॉर low value, that is 50, low value US, that is from 50 to 50,000 USD to 1 million. You have to just do electronic search in your back office. You have to search for resident, non-resident, the residence address, place of birth, whether residence or place of birth is outside India. First thing you have to check. Whether other address is outside India, whether telephone is outside India, whether there is an instruction to transfer funds outside India, for FII clients maybe, FII non-custodian trades maybe. Is there a POA given to a person outside India? Or the only address, the permanent address है ही नहीं, खाली correspondence address है, वो भी care of। ये सब we have to check for those clients which are in the medium range, 30 लाख। यदि इसमें सब कुछ इंडिया कुछ भी फर्क नहीं दिखा, बस और कुछ करने की जरूरत नहीं, आप तो अपना काम कर लीजिए। Now we go to high value clients more than $1 million. For those guys, you have to do, ये सब तो करना ही है, उसके अलावा you have to also do a paper search। वे उसकी फाइल निकालना, पन्ना पर है, कुछ नॉन इंडियन दिख रहा है, and if you find something non-Indian, then you have to treat that account as a reportable account. Now what happens if a fellow is an Indian, लेकिन कुछ मिल गया और अपने यूएस का समझ के उसको रिपोर्ट कर दिया, यूएस को इन्फॉर्म कर दिया, तो क्या हो जाएगा? हेवंस आर नॉट गोइंग टू फॉलो। यूएस वाले बोले तुम क्या, मतलब भैया मैं तो तुमसे भी लेना देना नहीं है, चैप्टर क्लोज हो जाएगा। सो अगेन एंड अगेन इन द कमिटी मीटिंग, जैसे एक्स्ट्रा रिपोर्टिंग इज नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम। द सेम डेटा डीपी भी रिपोर्ट कर रहा है, ब्रोकर भी रिपोर्ट कर रहा है, ये भी रिपोर्ट कर रहा है, दैट इज नॉट एन इशू। नॉट रिपोर्टिंग इज एन इशू। अमेरिकन जो डिस्कस हुआ है इंटरनेशनल बॉडी से डिस्कस, बोले बहुत ज़्यादा डेटा देने को क्या, बोले हम संभालेंगे, हमारा सॉफ्टवेयर संभालेंगे, बट प्लीज गिव अस डेटा। जैसे बैंक के पास पूरा इन्फॉर्मेशन लेकर रिपोर्ट करूँ, दैट इज अप्लाइड टू दैट। नाउ फॉर मोर देन अ मिलियन कैटेगरी दे हैव बोले पेपर सर्च है, ये कहाँ करेंगे? फॉर समवन लाइक म्यूचुअल फंड्स एंड लार्ज ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, जिनके करोड़ों क्लाइंट है, पागल है, मेरे कहाँ मैं पेपर सर्च करने वाला हूँ, मीशो तो इतना होल्डिंग है। उसके अंदर दे हैव ओनली इलेक्ट्रॉनिक सर्च ऑप्शन, प्रोवाइडेड दैट द बैक ऑफिस हैज द फॉलोइंग फील्ड्स: द फील्ड टू कैप्चर रेसिडेंशियल स्टेटस, द फील्ड टू कैप्चर रेसिडेंस एंड मेलिंग एड्रेस, which as per the paper file it should be inside, the field to capture telephone number as per the paper file, the field for noting the fact of funds transfer and the instructions क्या दिया हुआ है, and care of address के details. If your back office is so strong that it captures all this, then you don't need to do the paper search job. But you have to ensure that whatever is written in the paper is also in the system. अपने केस में everything comes with KYC part A, part 2. Part 1 goes to the KRA, part 2 is lying with us. As long as part 2 details are properly loaded in our back office. In fact, we'll all have to talk about back office vendors के साथ ये 3-4 चीजें आप और back office के अंदर fields add करें. So, if that's not the case, you have to do nothing. But still, if you find some reporting account, तो भैया ये मेरे 10,000 client है, इसमें से 15 reporting वाले हैं. This is what it is expected of you. Now, if someday a low value client becomes high value, then you have to do that additional paper search for those things. So now you have to keep a track at back office. Ki out of 10,000 clients, low value search done on so many clients and nothing found. And then if it goes higher, then you have to convert it to a high value search. This is what the rules in the search as on date. There's one more requirement that relationship manager opinion also counts. पेपर पे कुछ भी नहीं है, बट रिलेशनशिप का साहब है ये फिरंगी कोई स्टोरी है. सो यू हैव टू टेक ऑन, मतलब ही हैज रीजंस टू बिलीव दैट दिस इज अ इंटरनेशनल अकाउंट और नॉन रेसिडेंट अकाउंट. इन दैट केस यू हैव टू मार्क इट एज रिपोर्टेबल अकाउंट. अपने केस में रिलेशनशिप मैनेजर वुड बी रेमिजर, सबब्रोकर, एपी आई सपोज. सो अगेन वी आर गोइंग टू रिक्वेस्ट द रेगुलेटर और CBDT टू डिफाइन these entities as relationship managers. So, because not every broker office has a RM concept necessarily, but internationally it is expected RM is a expected concept. So, once you have done all the enhanced due diligence and you have found it to be clear, then you don't need to worry about that account unless at some point of time he gives another letter, he changes his phone number or changes anything. In that case, again you have to review. Address change हुआ, check करो. Telephone change हुआ, check करो. POA नया आया, check करो. So whoever is in charge of KYC in your office, the junior staff, they have to be told कि they have to be trained कि any changes in the back office system in terms of KYC, if it leads to any changes, any of these five things, and there is an international element out of it, then you have to take care. Now problem is in the KRA system. Okay, we all depend on the KRA data. एक broker ने एक office में change किया, the KRA sent a dump to all the other clients who is dealing with that. वो dump कितने लोग check करके अपने back office में update करते हैं? कोई माइक का नाम था आपको? It is dump. अभी ये भी नहीं पता कि dump आ रहा है. सच्ची? It's when you go and check it, it says rejected. Because somebody else has changed something. No. I'll tell you. Repeat this. Suppose I'm your client. Client code A1. And KRA ऊपर load कर दी. Then I become a client here. If I give a modification form and he changes it, you will get a download. You do. You get it. And you're expected to monitor the download every day. But this is not a KRA segment. But this will have an implication of FATCA. This सब आपस में जुड़ा हुआ है. उस बंदे ने sorry
unsolicited dump, it's called
unsolicited dump. It's called unsolicited dump. Yeah, thanks.
You have to go on the site and take it, or do you have to name?
I'm not sure now. Right. So this is what is expected out of us. Again, let me repeat, the whole idea of today's seminar is to sensitize, to answer the question, boss, मुझे क्या करना है? You will all have, you cannot depend on what I say. You will have to go and read the rules. And if you have any query कि बस rule page number 6 में line number 3 में समझ में नहीं आया, तो as a forum I can try to ensure that उसका आंसर मिले. But if you want कि यार please ये rule समझा दो पूरा, it is not going to happen. This is because every office is different, every style of function is different. It is there is no one. आज large brokers का अलग system process है, अपना छोटे routine brokers का अलग system process है. So it's very difficult to have a standard आंसर की बस ये कर लेते हैं. So requesting everyone to please now I think more or less there's certain small things. For example, aggregation of all account. Now suppose there's a joint account holder. उसका क्या करेंगे? उसका trading account A, trading account B, demat account A joint with B, demat account B joint with A. तो A का बैलेंस क्या लोगे? A will be trading account plus demat one plus demat one, and B will be B का trading account plus demat one plus demat. Joint holders will be double counted. Well, second holder है, first holder नहीं है, they expect to come to the balance. Again, we go PAN based search. PAN पे सर्च करेंगे तो सब निकल के बाहर आएगा जो. यदि इस बंदे ये PAN का कहाँ आता था, उसका टोटल मारो, ये कहाँ का टोटल मारो. That is what is one thing that is envisaged. Now rate of conversion, 50,000 US dollar का conversion rate में कहाँ से पकड़ो? That's another practical question. जो भी reporting period का जो end date का जो RBI reference rate है, that is going to be it. So for 30th June 2014, it will be that Google में कर लेना मिल जाएगा RBI reference rate. Because if $49,998 आ रहा है तो क्या? For 31st December 15 is this. For the entire year of 15, तो daily transaction हो रहा है. तो what rate will you take? Not the daily rate, just end of the year rate. पूरा साल का रुपीज में कैलकुलेशन करो और साल के एंड में जो RBI reference rate उससे करो. That is what the rules seem to indicate. And there are certain alternate due diligence procedures, but this is more or less the lines on. This is what I expected. This is just a flavor of what is expected in due diligence from the broker offices. Now, yeah, I would spend 10 minutes if you have anybody has any questions on due diligence. And after that, I would like to move to the next topic is whether is this rule applicable on me or not. Because that itself is a subject matter of great debate. Right? Any other point Priya wants to add? Achha, there's one more thing. In case of अभी तक जो मैं बोला, it was for individual clients. We also have non-individual clients. In non-individual clients, there are again due diligence requirements. In terms of controlling person, you look at the rules, they are again referring to all the documents that you are required to take for non-individual clients as per PMLA. Again, PMLA Act has a client requirement controlling interest also. So under a PMLA Act to comply with these rules. So as per PMLA, non-individual clients के लिए जो detail लिया, जो नाम पता है, address जो detail लिया, you have to do the due diligence on those guys to determine whether this is a reportable account or non-reportable account. As a nutshell, that is what.
So when we talk about entities, so entities means other than individuals. It includes your partnership, trust, or corporate, or any other form. Everyone. So anyone other than the individual, the major problem in doing the due diligence is that you need to categorize first that whether that institution is a financial institution or a non-financial institution. So for example, as a depository participant, you may fall under the category of financial institution, therefore you will have a GIN in place. So a certification is required from that entity to ascertain whether it's a financial institution or non-financial institution. If the entity comes back and says, okay, I'm a financial institution, then they need to provide you a GIN, that's a Global Intermediary Identification Number, which is allotted by the IRS. If they provide you the GIN, then they are out of reporting category. You don't need to report them. Because the whole idea of FATCA or CRS is create a web of people who are compliant and catch the ultimate individual who is getting money out of it. So if you get GIN for that participating FFI, so that financial institution, then that becomes non-reporting. Now comes the second category. A financial institution who does not give you a GIN and you believe that it is a financial institution, then that becomes a non-participating financial institution and it becomes a reportable account. The third category is the non-financial entity. A non-financial entity, best example is Infosys, for example. Infosys is a trading company. It is completely on its own. It does not, its major income is its fee income. So you will have two types of non-financial entity. One which is only created to earn incomes like royalty, interest or dividend or rent, which is all passive income. So without involvement of human intervention, the income is just flowing. For example, a real estate company has its assets in place. There is no other activity in that company and it's just getting rent as its income. Then it becomes a passive income and that entity will become a passive non-financial entity as against Infosys, which is a very operative company. If you come across a company where the income is only passive income, then you need to go back and see whether the controlling persons of that entity are non-residents. If the controlling persons of that entity are non-residents as per the PMLA Act, then you need to report those controlling persons as well. That's the kind of mandate all the financial institutions have got, and therefore it becomes a little more complicated. The best way to tackle this situation is get a self-certification from the relevant entities and through a form or a set of questions which will give you answers for all these questions. Once you have something in writing from the institution or the entity itself, then that is a sufficient document for you all to say that, okay, I have completed my due diligence and in my view, because of these responses that I have got, it is not a reportable account, or it is a reportable account, then therefore this this is what I need to report in the next financial year. So that's what I wanted to add.
That part was the most confusing, so I left it out. Anyways, any questions on due diligence processes? Yes, sir. See, for 2014, it's just a holding. For 2015, year-end value.
Okay, so if he has nil balance as on last date, he's out of reporting plan.
Uttamji just mentioned that for the beginning to ascertain whether your pre-existing account is of low value or high value account, you need to draw down for the calendar year 2014. It will be two dates which are available, which is 30th June and one is 31st December 2014. For the year head on, the date will be 31st December of each year, and that's the date you need to look at the value.
May I ask a question on your behalf? So if a non-resident comes on 5th January, they तुम्हारा सौदा करता है till 25th December, फिर वो खाता नील कर लेते हैं, and 31st December को नील हो गया, and फिर 5 जनवरी का फिर शुरू हो जाता है. So as a financial institution, I may not need to report.
अरे मनी ले जाएगा तो बैंक वाला रिपोर्ट करेगा.
When we talk about the balance or the value, that will only come down to the year end. But as far as transactions is concerned, for example, when we talk about the depository participant, the only thing which you are required to report is the value, because DP as such will not be privy to information with regards to transactions. Account may have credit and debit all throughout the year, but value-wise you may not be aware. As of year-end, DP will be only aware about the year-end value. When we talk, a broker will have a reporting obligation with respect to transactions. So when it comes down to transactions which is in the later year, that is the gross proceeds. Yeah. Gross proceeds. That's the term used here. So that gross proceeds required to be reported. That's the way it is. That's right.
The balance is made to total cost.
Yes.
As a broker.
That's
right.
Right.
Then there's the aspect is, if that person when he fills the KYC form and he says I'm a non-resident, see all this you have to search कि non-resident है या नहीं. ये खुदा बोलता बस मत यूपी का रेसिडेंट हो, सब ऑफिशियल है. तो उसको तो रिपोर्ट करना ही है. अब when the KYC form you give to clients, you said, are you resident of India or not resident of India? The boss, I am resident of India. If he says that, for those clients you have to do the basic search कि खोटा declaration तो नहीं दे रहा. But somebody says, no, I am not resident of India. I can't, because I am resident of UK. Very good. For those transactions, you have to report irrespective of thresholds.
Again, when we're talking about UK, we're talking about the common reporting standards, which is the non-US part. So there the high value and low value, basically for individuals, even 1 rupee is reportable. So he's right that for UK or any other non-resident which is outside, which is a non-US individual, you will certainly have to report even 1 rupee transaction or value.
So regardless of where the ledger is at the end of the year,
Yes.
you report the transaction.
It's the only.
And for 15.
That's right.
And for 14.
14.
Rest of the world doesn't apply.
Only value.
Only US applies.
Yes.
So in 2014, as far as US reporting is concerned, if the ledger balance is 0 for a broker,
You don't need to report anything.
Now, as a broker, I am required to register an investment entity. And as a DP, I am required to register at a custodian entity.
So registrations next one will be take it up in the.
Because I am just clubbing reporting, how do we do in that case? Because in that case, balances do we direct based on combined or do we take it separately?
मतलब यू आर सेइंग कि एक बंदा है जिसका डीमैट बैलेंस है $40,000 जिसका ट्रेडिंग बैलेंस है $40,000 तो दोनों का टोटल तो दोनों का टोटल तो 80 हो गया. 80 करके मैंने सर्च किया और सर्च करके वो रिपोर्टेबल निकला. अब मुझे रिपोर्ट करना है तो फाइल कैसे लोड करूँ? 40 की 2 फाइल लोड करूँ कि 80 की 1 फाइल लोड करूँ? इज दैट द क्वेश्चन? हैव आई अंडरस्टूड द क्वेश्चन करेक्ट?
The form for reporting is only one. While we may have categories, when we go and register on the income tax website, and you need to select that, okay, I'm a broker or a custodian. But the form for reporting is only one. And therefore, my belief is that you need to report only, you need to register only as one of the categories. You don't need multiple registrations. And you need to include all the information in that form with respect to a particular reportable account, given that you are one entity which is reporting, and file the report. That's how I believe it will be. But I want to add here is that whether multiple registrations are required or not, and whether I need to include in 2 forms or not, that is again subject to clarification of CBDT, because it is still not very clear. This question was already raised to them.
Any more on duty? Okay, then we'll move to the first part, whether who are we and why are we under FATCA? And this is one presentation. We'll just go through it and then we'll take it.
So, comfortable if I sit and talk, or you want to interact? Okay. Thank you. So, just the basics before we begin this. This is an information reporting mandate, as you all know. What they want, what is the real idea behind this? One is, of course, the black money or unreported money which is flowing in throughout the world. There are a lot of action points already coming out from various institutions, and especially the OECD, to tackle this issue. And one of them is information exchange between the countries. So, US started this drive with FATCA. FATCA was almost out for discussions for about 2.5 years, and fortunately or unfortunately, I have studied the entire growth of FATCA in the last 3 years, the way it has been. And till that, from that time onwards, we have been advising a lot of clients that you please begin your process, because this is going to be a reality, and that's the case in today. So basically it's an information exchange mandate. What it really wants is that any money in India, for example, of a non-resident, which is either being held by someone, used by someone in some manner or the other, invested somewhere, is required to be reported back to the home country, where he is supposed to be naturally taxed as a tax resident. So, a fundamental aspect here to understand is that at least one of the institutions who is dealing with that money is required to report. Either it be transactions or it be value or the balance value basically. So, when we talk about banks, banks will have two types of transactions to report, which is the account balance as of that year end and the interest which is paid to the account holder. We're not talking about banks here, so we move to the other institutions. Talk about DP or a custodian. Again, they will have information only privy with respect to the account balances at the year end. But now the broker is the only person who has information with respect to all the aspects, which is the transactions which is happening for the clients, the monies which are held in the margin as margins with the broker, the ledger, the penny account, as you rightly mentioned, which is being held by the broker. So we may say that okay, there is a dual reporting as regards what is being flowing through an investor's account, specifically a non-resident, the reportable account. But if we look at it deeply, only one institution is required to, it will be ultimately reporting this, because not everyone will have all the information in place. Correct me if I am wrong technically somewhere, okay. So with that fundamental in place, we are looking at the rules which are framed, the IGA and the CRS competent authority, basically Common Reporting Standard Agreement, which India has signed with the OECD, and interpreted those definitions in a manner where at least one of the institutions is required to report. So what we have done here in the presentation is that we've covered two aspects, two products basically that we're looking at for all the audience sitting here. One is the broker and the DP. I hope that is visible to everyone. Is it? Okay, I'll read out that. Products are categorized in two parts. One is the broker and DP. Generally, a broker may also have a depository participant services that you provide. And the other is the PMS, portfolio management services. Any PMS institutions here? Any? Okay, so we can cover that too. Broker and DP are divided into two categories. One, the depository participant will fall generally under the custodial institution definition, and the broker will generally fall under the investment entity definition. What is the definition? Say we come to that. And the portfolio manager comes into an investment entity definition. So we have quickly analyzed and created a flowchart for you to go through to analyze where exactly and why you would be impacted, if at all. So first is the custodial institution. It says if you hold substantial portion of the business being financial assets for the account of others. Now, there are three parts here. You hold something on behalf of someone. That holding, your income attributable to the holding of that financial should be substantial. Substantial is again defined. And what you're holding should be financial assets. So financial assets again is wide enough to cover anything. It also includes monies. Monies that you hold on account of others and securities. So substantial portion means income attributable to the holding of financial assets and related financial services. Now again, this is very wide. You may be providing broking services, you may be providing consulting services, advisory services to those clients. You may be providing DP services to the clients. All these are, for example, you are charging them some maintenance fee or some annual broking fee. That that may not be a result of the actual broking activity, but there is something that you are earning in relation to holding that asset. So it is very, very wide to include all your services, and we believe it will be very unlikely to come out of the 20% bracket of that substantial portion that we are talking about. Then we come to the investment entity part. It says there are two tests. One is the trading test and the managed by test. So in my view, the trading test is very clear. It says that if you trade instruments on behalf of others, you come under the investment entity category. Managed by test, again, it is not very clearly defined here, so it is open to interpretation and not getting into too much in this, because we need some clarification on this aspect. Now, so if you go to see, it is divided into three parts. First question you need to ask is whether I am a financial institution and whether I am falling in the definitions of financial institution. That's the first thing you need to analyze. The second thing you need to analyze whether I hold any financial account, because that is what you're going to report. Financial account is what you're going to report. So your financial accounts again is categorized into two parts. One is with respect to the custodial institution. It says an account other than an insurance contract or annuity contract. So it's carving out the insurance business here for benefit of another person that holds one or more financial assets. So naturally the DP and the broker here who holds monies is likely to be covered. An equity or debt interest in an investment entity. Now this is a little bit tricky and here basically we need to ask a question. So for example, if a broker who is trading on behalf of others is an investment entity, are we required to report the equity interest in the broking entity? So the initial interpretation may look like, but that's not the case here. This definition is more likely to impact the funds which acts as a trust or any other entity, and who are investing those monies on behalf of investors. So that fund itself is an equity or a debt interest in that entity, and that is required to be reported. This scenario should not impact the broking end. But we are wanting more clarification on this, because the guidance notes are not really clarifying this aspect in detail. Okay, this is very interesting. So I just mentioned, and maybe stopped Uttamji confirming that you can relax if you have only local client base. But if you see this exemption and the conditions put in here, in my view, it is very, very difficult to get out of these conditions. It first says, okay, you are granted a license and you are a regulated financial institution. Yes, you are. No problem on that. No fixed place of business outside India. Most of you would not have a fixed place of business outside India. That is also doable. Does not solicit customers or account holders outside India. Okay, you may put in that we accept only resident accounts or resident individuals. But there are two aspects to this. One, when you accept an entity account, will you go down and see whether the substantial owner is a US owner or a non-resident? Is the first thing you need to ask yourself. And would you not want to serve that client? That's the first thing. Two, what if there is a change later on? How will you tackle that? That means you need continuous due diligence monitoring. When we talk about individuals, identical case may happen. For example, you are serving an individual right now who is a resident. When you onboarded that individual, he was a resident. For job purposes, he went to US for about 2 to 3 years. When you get a new set of documents and a confirmation from him, you will realize maybe that he is now a non-resident. So will you stop serving that client or close that account? Or would you still want to continue serving him? Secondly, who wants to lose the customer? So here again it will boil down to how stringent your due diligence processes are, whether you are monitoring or not. And whether really you want to give away that customer only because you have this fat card CRS reporting. That's the question one needs to ask. Then you are required to identify resident account holders for purpose of either information reporting or withholding of tax with respect to financial accounts held by residents or for purposes of satisfying the due diligence requirements in the PMLA. Again, you need to do, it says, in short it says you need to do the due diligence or continuous monitoring to ascertain whether an account is still a resident account. It says at least 98% of the financial accounts by value. So, one very important thing here is this 98% will again come down to you monitoring and doing the due diligence and continuously seeing, okay, I am not exceeding that limit at all. And at the same time, what does this value includes? Will you aggregate a particular account, and when we do the aggregation, apply the aggregation rules, will it include that aggregated value, or it is only with respect to a certain product? That is another question which is not very clear. It says FI has policies and procedures consistent with Rule 114H. So it says, okay, you need to do the due diligence in any case if you want to come out and say I am not required to report. It says that if any non-resident reportable account or a passive non-financial entity is identified, the financial account shall go and report. So then, where is the exemption here? Okay, so if you identify a non-resident account or a passive non-financial entity, then you are anyways required to report. So what exemption are we really talking about here? It says in case of pre-existing account of an individual non-resident account, FI to review account as per Rule 114H, identify if it is reportable account or financial account held by a non-participant FI, and report such account as required. So again it says the same thing, you do the due diligence, if it is a reportable account, you go ahead and report. Each related financial institution of the FI must be incorporated or organized in India. So if you are held by any non-resident entity, you cannot avail this exemption. Must not have policies or practices which discriminate against opening or maintaining financial account for individuals who are specified US persons and residents of India. Basically expats. So it should not, for example, the mutual funds, on the mutual fund website, you may notice that, okay, they're saying we do not solicit US clients, we do not sell our products to US clients. That's what they say. So you cannot do that. And if you see, see the third point, does not solicit customers or account holders outside India. So these two they are not contradictory. Really, it says that you are not doing any activity outside India to sell your product. That is one. That's the third point. And the last point says that you are not denying anybody who is resident in India to or use your product, basically, to invest or take your services. That's what it's saying. So practically, if you go and see, it is really difficult to come out of this exemption. And in my view, it's completely redundant. One may have to really do a deep due diligence to come out of it. And practically, we have experience. We've done a lot of. We've done it for a lot of clients already. It is not possible to come out of this exemption. And interestingly, the next slide.
The last point. Just specified for individuals who are specified US residents and residents. What does it mean?
Expats, people coming in India who may be US, but they are currently residing in India for job purposes, employment purposes, or business purposes.
It doesn't mean for people who are actually residing.
So I'm just jumping to the last point here. The guidance note para 8.3 says, GIN also needs to be obtained by the financial institutions claiming exemption as non-reporting FI on the grounds of being a financial account with a local client base. That means you need to anyways register and have a GIN in place. So you are going to be a participating FFI. The only thing which you need to look at after doing all the due diligence is that whether I am a local client base and therefore I don't want to report. I might as well report one account and comply with it. That's the more safer bet to
So in
do.
short, you have to take a change one way or the other.
Yes, that's what the guidance note is saying. And in fact, if you go to the FATCA rules, the IRS rules, even there that exemption is not provided. It says you need to obtain it. So then we are not really looking at getting this exemption anywhere in any ways. Okay, so just previously, let's complete the discussion there. Okay. Now, when we are talking about income attribute, this is a very important definition because based on this, you will be able to determine whether you are impacted or not. It says income attributable to holding financial assets and related financial account services. Because there's a 20% threshold which says a substantial portion of your income. It says FATCA says it includes fees for providing financial advice with respect to financial assets held in custody by the entity. Now it says includes. Now we are all aware, maybe people from tax side may be already aware that this word includes is interpreted in a very wide way already by the tax authorities. So we are not very sure what are they trying to say here. It means that only fees for financial advice is included, or it includes other aspects also. For example, when we talk about the CRS definition, it says custody, account maintenance, transfer fee, and loads of other things are covered. So it's a very wider definition in CRS. So what we have been always saying is that you look at your due diligence activities and your entire compliance mandate from CRS perspective, because it is much wider. You can anyways not get out of CRS. So why not then, as a byproduct, comply with FATCA today? Are you with me on that? Okay, so any questions until here, then I can move to the flowchart. Because flowchart is little complicated, and I'll try and make you understand to the extent I can. But I just wanted to complete this bit before I move. 98% local.
What do you mean is by
Value.
transaction total
Value.
or
It says account value.
accounts value, transaction value, including other segments also?
No, it only says value. Holding. Your holding. As a DP, what do you hold? As a broker.
Only as a broker.
As a broker, what monies you hold?
It's not based on turnover.
ये 98% से कोई फायदा नहीं है, भूल जाओ. Practically, मतलब it seems to suggest that if you're 98% client local है, तो तुम माफ हो. Because मैं तो 98% local है ही, लेकिन पर value ले लो, transaction ले लो, कैसे भी ले लो. लेकिन माफ हो, लेकिन तुमको एक नौ चीज करनी है, और चीज. भैया वो नौ यदि मुझे करनी है तो फिर माफी से फायदा क्या होगा? That is effectively the impact of this. They put the exemption when the exemption first came. We were all thrilled. Wow, this jaan chutti. But after that, when we went into fine print, the other 9 conditions, along with the 98%, are so onerous or actually beats the entire purpose of taking the exception. So might as well do it. Might as well. That is the theory behind it.
Okay. So just to add here, this local client base exemption is only FATCA exemption. This is not, there is no exemption under CRS for local client base. So that's what I said, CRS is much wider. And as a byproduct, you will always comply with FATCA. You can always comply with FATCA because the only thing you need to carve out is US. That's it. So it's automatic. If you go to see, if you comply with CRS, you can easily comply with FATCA. Okay, so it says if you're a PO, if brokers have the POA, that's not a problem. It says if the client has given you a POA of another non-resident, then that's a problem. Because it indirectly means that the beneficial owner of that money is someone else. And therefore you need to do a deeper due diligence. So that is one of the indicators of him being a non-resident. It's just an indicator, it does not conclude that it is a reportable account. But if the broker has a POA, that is no indication. But that also, if you have a POA, that means you are acting on behalf of your customer, and therefore you fall under that definition. That simply means that. Any other question? Okay. I don't know how much it is readable, but I'll help you with. Okay, so the flowchart starts with whether I'm a broker or a DP. If I'm a DP, I need to go down and see whether that's the left hand side of your flowchart. It says whether I need to be a custodial institution. Then, even I am not able to read it from here. If you fall under a custodial institution, so one thing you need to ascertain is whether your income attributable to holding financial assets is 20% or more or is less than 20%. So if you're 20% or more, you are a custodial institution, you are a financial institution which is impacted, and therefore you need to go and register yourself. Once you register, you need to check whether you hold any financial account. So what is it that you are going to report? As a broker, for example, if you hold monies, or as a DP, you are going to hold securities on behalf of your customers, then that is what you are going to report. And again, you need to see whether if I don't hold anything, I am exempt. Whether that local client-based exemption is available to me or not. If the answer is yes, then I don't need to report anything. If the answer is no, I need to go ahead and report. Now, if you fall under the second category, which is my substantial, the income attributable to financial assets is less than 20% of the gross income, then you are not a FI, that is not a financial institution by definition, and therefore you neither need to register nor you need to report. That is what the first flowchart is saying. The second flowchart is little interesting, and we may have a circular reference here, and Uttamji might agree with me on that, is that if you're a broker, you're trading on behalf of others. That means you are an investment entity. Investment entity says that if you are a broker, and that comes from the FATCA Annexure 2, again this is a FATCA exemption, and you're trading on behalf of others, and where the assets are held by a participating FFI. That means, for example, you are trading on behalf of brokers, and those securities which you trade are held in a depository participant of an institution which is a participating FFI. That means it has registration, it is doing all the due diligence, it is reporting. Then you are exempt. Okay. So the problem arises when you provide both as a single entity. You are also a broker, you are also a DP. Then you need to again go back to your DP function and therefore your flowchart, first flowchart, that whether you are a financial institution. In most cases, it is unlikely that you will fall outside of the definition. That's what our experience. Of course, subject to looking at your financials and coming out with a concrete answer. But in most cases, we believe it will be difficult to come out of this 20% gross income. So, any question here? Sure.
See, if in the case that the stockbroker is just a broker, he has an inherent license and register. But can he be registered under custodial as well?
Okay, so it's a good question. I was expecting that, and in fact, now, in case you are only a broker, you do not provide DP services, then the only due diligence that you need to do is whether the securities that you deal with, or the customers for whom the securities you deal with, are with depository participants, and whether the depository participant is a financial institution or a participating financial institution. For example, for a customer A, you have traded certain shares. You will have a direct connect with DP because of the tripartite agreement. That DPA should provide you a certification that here is my GIN, I am registered, I am a participating FFI. That leg is not covered here, so you are exempt by virtue of that. So again, this is FATCA interpretation. addition, as rightly Uttam ji is mentioning, CRS is much wider. It also covers brokers as custodial institution. That's the worry, and we certainly expect some clarification on that from CBDT. Because then it will be a dual reporting problem. That same entity reports the same thing, or two entities reporting the same thing again.
See, the point is, stepping back a bit, who has to report? Anybody who is a financial institution has to report, unless it's specifically marked. Who is the financial institution? There are three categories: depositories, depository institutions, custodian institutions, and investment entities. Depository institutions be bank and similar businesses. So banks, NBFCs, they will go, maybe NBFCs, I don't know, would go in depository institutions. Custodial institutions is those entities, loosely speaking, जो दूसरों के बिहाफ पे पैसा या शेयर सिक्योरिटी संभाल के रखता है. In case of DPs, it seems like though there are certain opinion which says that DPs भी माफ है, actually depository is the holder. Anyway, you can go on and on. But depositories में तो clearly we are holding something on behalf of others. Broking, client का पैसा अपने पास है, client account में, तो आपका पैसा है. क्लाइंट का शेयर अपने पूल में पड़ा है या क्लाइंट डरी में पड़ा है, वो आपके शेयर है. यू आर होल्डिंग फाइनेंशियल असेट्स ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ अदर्स, वेदर यू आर डीपी और नॉट डीपी, बट aren't you trustee of those monies? Other that money is security is lying in your custody. So by that logic, even a broker who is not DP, is he a custodial institution or not a custodial institution? I don't know. In fact, अच्छा जो पैसा मेरा बैंक में पड़ा हुआ है वो भी ऐसे तो देखा तो पास थ्रू है ना.
कोई पास थ्रू सर, कोई ओपिनियन आया है, इट इज ओनली अ पास थ्रू
सर. अगेन आई एम रेजिंग अ क्वेश्चन, आई डोंट हैव द आंसर. इफ यू लुक एट द गाइडेंस नोट इशूड बाय
sir, section 114F5, I am talking of the brokers who are simply executing the trades. It says that you are non-reporting financial accounts. Executes trades on behalf of customer.
पूरा पढ़ो.
सर सेक्शन है 114.
उसके बाद एग्जीक्यूट आगे.
Execute trades on behalf of a customer for the purpose of investing. तो वो non-reporting financial institution.
Your point is right.
114F5 उसमें सब क्लोज है.
अब मैं पढ़
F में भी.
मैं सेम चीज पढ़ता हूँ. ये these are the people who are exempt. An investment entity established in India that is a financial institution only because it does 1 to 3, which is gives investment advice, या PMS करता है, या execute trades on behalf of customers for the purpose of investing, managing or administering funds or securities deposited. Now deposited in the name of the customer with the financial institution other than with the financial institution. तो जो क्लाइंट का पैसा अपने पास पड़ा हुआ है, lying with the bank, is it deposited in the name of the customer? सर, the point ये मैं भी वही पढ़ना चाहता हूँ जो आप पढ़ रहे हो कि अपने जान छूटे. बट यदि 3 साल बाद कोई रेगुलेटर आके बोलेगा कि तुम पे लागू था और फिर 3 साल में उल्टा लगेगा तो क्या? So only the devil's advocate. So in this case, when we talk about custodian certificates, ठीक है, LIC अपना काम करता है, तो we trade on behalf of the client, where the funds and the securities are lying with another financial institution. ठीक है, वो custodian के पास पड़ा रह के पड़ा नहीं, मेरे उसमें पैसा ना आया ना गया, तो clearly निकल गया. But when I do for local बंदा जो पैसा मेरे डीमैट में आ रहा है, मेरे बैंक में आ रहा है, क्वार्टरली सेटलमेंट क्वार्टर में एक बार हो रहा है, तब तक पैसा मेरे पास क्रेडिट पड़ा हुआ है. ठीक है, यदि ऐसा कुछ हुआ या डीवीपी हो गया, उसके बाद
डीवीपी की बात
नहीं सर, एग्जाम्पल के टॉपिक नहीं बनाते, कहने का प्रिंसिपल या कंसेप्ट से आते हैं. इज द मनी ऑफ द क्लाइंट लाइंग विद मी? ठीक है, इज इट लाइंग विद द फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन? अब आप बोलते नहीं मैं ही फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन भी तो हूँ, तो मेरे पास भी पढ़ा तो जमीन में घुस गया. ऐसा एक्सट्रीम में लेना है तो सर्कुलर रेफरेंस में कि यदि किसी फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन का पढ़ा है तो ये फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन माफ है, लेकिन मैं खुद फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन हूँ मैं माफ हूँ लेकिन मैं फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन तो हुई, इसलिए पढ़ा तो चलेगा। ये तो लॉजिक तो एक्सट्रीम हो जाएगा। फिर आपने जो ओपिनियन दिया सर, इस बात पर तो झगड़ा चल रहा है, 6 से 3 घंटे और चलता रहेगा। अब एक और व्यू लेता हूँ, मैं तो कहता हूँ इन्वेस्टमेंट एंटिटी नहीं हो, ये दोज हुआ इन्वेस्टमेंट एंटिटी और कुछ करते हैं तो माफ है। आप ये कह रहे हैं ना, मतलब तुम इन्वेस्टमेंट एंटिटी तुमको कस्टोडियल इंस्टीट्यूशन, हाँ नहीं पूरा एनालिसिस कर लिया, ठीक है। अब कस्टोडियल इंस्टीट्यूशन का डेफिनेशन करिए, पता आप कस्टोडियल I'll ask one point target is this is the brokers and generals निकले, ठीक है। This is what we want. So this is one place जहाँ पे निकल सकते हैं शायद, right? बहुत बढ़िया आइडिया पे निकल गए। In fact, again, if you look at CRS and all, इसमें mention है कि wherever the local regulator feels that a particular class of people are low risk, उनको छोड़ सकते हैं। So we are going to request CBDT and convince that brokers are low risk, छोड़ सकते हैं। But the rules, the way they read, what has been passed, what has been gazetted, उस रूल्स का पहले कोई यदि ओपिनियन देता है कि भैया तुम माफ हो, तो इसलिए तुम पे लागू नहीं है, तो उनका ओपिनियन है, he is entitled to the opinion. As a person, as in my intellectual capacity, I find it difficult to digest that opinion. And my next bookly is, even if किसी तरह खींच तान के तुम इन्वेस्टमेंट एंटिटी के डेफिनेशन में निकल गए, वे भी तुम कस्टोडियन एंटिटी के डेफिनेशन से नहीं निकल पाए। अब कस्टोडियन एंटिटी का डेफिनेशन एक बार मैं पढ़ देता हूँ, जस्ट साइड पे नहीं है। कस्टोडियन इंस्टीट्यूशन मीन्स एनी एंटिटी that holds as a substantial part of its business financial assets on account of others. Do you hold financial accounts on behalf of others or not? No. You are a pass-through entity. You don't hold it. ऐसा आप कहना चाहते हैं? I disagree with you. And where the income attributable to holding of financial assets and related financial services equals 20%. जो क्लाइंटों का माल पड़ा हुआ है, क्लाइंटों का शेयर मेरे पूल और डीमैट में पड़ा हुआ है, ब्रोकिंग उसका रिलेटेड सर्विस है, तो 20% में मैं बचूंगा ना। आगे लेट्स गो टू द गाइडेंस नोट issued by CBDT on 31st August, which says entities that safekeep financial assets for the account of others, such as custodian banks, brokers, and central securities depositories, would generally be considered as custodian institutions. ये CBDT ने लिख के दिया है। Now, CBDT भी अपने अक्ल से नहीं लिखी। It has referred to page 44 of CRS and 160 of commentary. ये बुक खरीद के लाया मैं, ऑनलाइन खरीदा था। अब इसमें ही पढ़ता हूँ। सब पागल कर दिया इसने। ये पूरा कस्टोडियन इंस्टीट्यूशन में एक पेज है, which says, अब इससे भी आगे। I'll read it out. Listen. Entities that save, it's a repeat. Entities that keep financial assets on account of others, such as custodian banks, brokers, and central securities depositories, would generally be considered as custodian institutions. ये सेम कॉपी पेस्ट है। यहाँ पे एक लाइन और लिखा है। Entities that do not hold financial assets on account of others, such as insurance brokers, would not be custodian institutions. Correct? जो इंश्योरेंस ब्रोकर है, वो कस्टोडियन इंस्टीट्यूशन किस एंगल से बनता है? वो तो सीधा इंश्योरेंस अपने को बेच गया। बट जो स्टॉक ब्रोकर है, बोलते साहब मैं तो इंश्योरेंस ब्रोकर जैसा हूं। मुश्किल है।
I'm never going to keep, if I'm never going to keep any NRI money with me, except when it is a DVP.
Your point is,
So
this is not
I-
the question.
I have no insurance.
No, the question is not DVP. The question is, are you a custodian institution?
No, he's not talking, he's talking about a broking.
Achha,
As a broking institute, I am having an NRI. As a DVP, do I need to?
Stop. Okay, we'll go step by. Are you an investment entity? Yes, एक मिनट. Upon are you an investment? Right. Now, do you fall under the exemption provided in point 6? Okay, that is the second question. No, the point F. Do you fall under exemption? If you believe that you fall under exemption, then don't register, don't report. आप तो बोलिए ओपिनियन ले लिया कि मांग रहे हो? मुझे लगा आपको किसी ने ओपिनियन ये दिया है। ठीक सर, झगड़ा कर लिया ना आपसे। एनीवे सर, आई जस्ट पास लास्ट बस बॉस, ये प्राइमर फेसिंग पहली बार पढ़ा तो मुझे ये भी लगा कि अपने इसमें से निकल गया, लेकिन नीचे जो लास्ट लाइन में जो लास्ट 3 लाइन लिखी है ना, उसमें अटक गए। फिर आई लुक्ड एट द IGA, US India IGA, इवन दैट इज इन पब्लिक डोमेन, उसमें भी सेम वर्ड्स लिखे हुए। ठीक है, मनी डिपॉजिटेड इन द नेम ऑफ द कस्टमर विद द फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन। Okay, now in case of DVP or even PIS, same day पैसा घूम जाता है। ठीक है, अगेन वी कैन आर्ग्यू, बट कोई NRI FNO में ट्रेडिंग कर रहा है, मार्जिन डिपॉजिट छोड़ दिया तो
That's a different issue. If our NRI is
so
only
every business model is different, every style of trading is different. If you're doing only institution clients and occasionally एक DVP हो गया और आप बोल रहे हो मैं इसमें exemption लेना चाहता हूँ, तो शायद possible, बट अब वो शायद पॉसिबल, आई डोंट नो, बट एक भी DVP नहीं हुआ 100% कस्टोडियन, तो देयर इज नो क्वेश्चन, क्लियर योर एग्जाम्पल। दिस इन्वेस्टमेंट एंटिटी का जो एग्जाम्पशन है ना, इट इज मोर, आई पर्सनली मोर अप्रोप्रिएट फॉर कस्टोडियन सेटल्ड PMS। इन PMS इफ यू आर लेस देन 500 करोड़ का आप काम करते हो तो कस्टोडियन नॉट कंपल्सरी, मोर देन 500 में कस्टोडियन कंपल्सरी। इफ यू आर डूइंग अ कस्टोडियन सेटल्ड PMS, definitely you are marked in this. But if you are doing a non-custodian settlement PMS, I think तो आपको माफी नहीं है, जिसमें आप कहोगे कि एज पर सेवी नॉर्म्स 24 घंटे के अंदर शेयर्स तो मुझे सही आदमी को ट्रांसफर करना ही है। And these are the points. Now if I say anything, it will be merely be repeating of what I have already said. Think about it. उसके बाद भी यदि आपको लगे कि एग्जाम में तो मत करो कुछ, भगवान करे आप सही हो।
So again, we are coming to the fundamental question as to at least one institution, financial institution, must report monies held on behalf of others. At least one. So when it comes to all those other products where you generally hold money for others, the question that one needs to ask is whether that has been reported by someone else right now or not. And the answer will be clearly no, because you are the only person privy with that information. So that's the question that needs to be kept in mind, before analyzing whether it impacted or not impacted. Again, as I said, FATCA is narrower, CRS is much wider, and one needs to clearly look at both the aspects before deciding on the final outcome. Next one is PMS. Again, we've already discussed this aspect. You have a pool account and a non-pool account. Pool account you will generally fall under custodial institution definition, and non-pool account will fall under investment entity definition. Again, the same debate for both these different same entity, maybe same business, but different ways of doing it, and you may fall under custodial account, given that you are maintaining a pool account. You don't maintain a separate account for your customers, and therefore you are holding money on behalf of others or holding assets on behalf of others, and therefore you may be impacted. So the flow chart is identical but different for a different product. So you need to see whether the trading is happening through a participating financial institution. Then you are out for the definition as an investment entity. That due diligence is required. Sorry, I think I'm not able to.
In a PMS, if it's a non-pool account, and if it's done by a custodian, then it's exempt.
I think I just answered that. So if you're doing it, if you're doing the trading through a participating financial institution, then you might avail the exemption that is provided under FATCA.
So do you need to require to get the GI number from the participating institution?
So if you need to then analyze whether you are falling under any other category. Are you holding monies? are you a custodial institution or not? That needs to be. So in any manner, if you're holding money or securities on behalf of your customers, the answer is no. Then you need to do a due diligence whether the trading that you're doing for your customers, either it can be the bank or the custodian, is a participating institution or not. If it is, then you can avail the exemption.
See, a broker who has a 100% local client base, still he is reporting in the under income tax. Does he need to obtain a GIN? Like 114H, he is registering under the registered financial institution. He just has a local client base.
If your due diligence throws out a report which says nothing is reportable, you don't need to file. You need to just file a nil report. There's a provision for nil report as well. So what is GIN really? You're saying that okay, you are admitting that I'm a financial institution and I will do all the due diligence and monitoring which is required under the rules. That's what you're admitting. I mean, that's the kind of compliance you are agreeing to. And in my view, in any case, you will have to do it to find out whether you are one. So you can do a little bit of backward working here, that you may start with due diligence and see whether you are impacted or not impacted. Okay. Of course, first you need to see whether you are a financial institution. But I don't see any option to due diligence that you are required to do, because even if you want to avail any exemption of a local client base, then it clearly already includes that. The guidance already says that if you are availing that exemption, you need to opt in GIN. There is no option.
That's like guidance note 8.3.
Yeah.
Doesn't that trap us on all counts?
So it says you just you register, and if you are availing the local client base exemption, that means you've already done the due diligence to find out if they are local client base. That's what I'm saying. You are not actually being given any exemption of sorts, because due diligence is the most difficult part that you need to do. Registration and reporting may not be as difficult because you already got your answers by then. So yes, I agree with you, it's a trap. But due diligence is the way, is the answer to that. Please.
I have a question. Just as you said, the GIN number. If I'm a broker and my client is registered, say for an example, ICICI Bank, he has a Demat account there.
Right.
I need to get the GIN number of ICICI Bank.
That's right.
If I ask my customer, he says, I don't know, I don't care. How do I, as an intermediary, ensure that I'm able to get the GIN, either through the regulator issuing certain compulsion for the customer to give it to me, or how do I move the next step?
Okay, so there are a couple of ways in which you may do it. I mean, you may find out the right way. One is, of course, check with your customer, and you may already be aware of which financial institutions he's dealing with. You may write to the bank directly, referring to the customer name or whatever internal reference number or account number that you may be interacting the bank for, and ask the bank to provide that with respect to this, and given the requirements under this rule, I am required to know whether you are a participating FFI or not. And if you are, then please provide us the GIN. That GIN is also available on the IRS website for you to reconcile. And you can then confirm, yes, it is a participating FFI, and therefore you don't need any further action.
Yeah, that's running in circles. I mean, if there is some regulation which says, which RBI imposes on them, or say SEBI imposes on them, then only it makes sense. I mean, we're going to run pillar to post. Imagine us going to ICICI Bank and asking them for the, he doesn't know about himself. You know?
So what we have also been saying, so under FATCA, you are a deemed compliant FFI. That means it is bound on everyone. It is bound on every financial. So the safe assumption is that all the impacted financial institutions are doing the needful. That's the basic assumption you can run with. And you can go to the IRS website, search for ICICI Bank, get the GIN, and just write a letter or you can keep it on records that this is the search I've got from IRS website, and that is sufficient. That's it. That's the only thing you can do. That's the way out.
So there's no compulsion. I mean, it's more our own due diligence kind of thing which we try and run and get it done.
So the only challenge is what will you do under CRS? This is just FATCA.
Right.
Again, CRS is much wider and we don't see any exceptions given under CRS.
The registration of CRS will be a process.
So that is not out yet, and we don't see any registration as such now.
Will be state under income tax.
Right.
What we have already registered pre-30th September.
Yeah.
So that's it.
My second question is this. Sure. As we define the depository to the final where real assets of the clients are, are the depositories got their CHIT numbers? Or can we just quote that CHIT number? Why do we individually as a DP, because we are not holding these assets, we are just an agent in transition.
So that's another leg of argument. So the depositories here basically is holding. So I talked about this before, is that there are two legs to it. How much information does a depository have? Who is collecting the KYC information? Who has the KYC information to go and do the due diligence? Are these types of questions you need to ascertain and determine who is a reportable entity, who is a reporting entity basically. So as regards the depository participant is concerned, you have a KRA kind of platform where the common pool of due diligence KYC is maintained. So you have access to that and you can rely on that the rules even envisage that situation. So you are relying on a third party for your KYC. And to the extent of the information that a depository participant has, he has to report. So you may not have information with respect to transactions. You may have information only with respect to the value. Then you are required to report it.
No, I fully agree with that. I'm not talking about that. Today, as a DP or as the depositories don't even have place to inform them about the TIN number of the foreigner. So for us to, I mean, we are wanting to collect all this information, but when our parent is not even bothered about collecting that information, how do we, I mean, we're doing all this processing work downstairs here, but the parent up there is still not collecting that information.
Right, so in my view, there is some alignment which is required on the overall KYC requirements or the PML requirement that we are talking about. Because ultimately what is being settled in the KRA as the KYC information is what is being collected by the central depository that you are talking about. Right? So that needs to change, because otherwise it will be difficult for any participant or any financial institution to rely on that information.
So that's the problem we face in collecting this information from the client. He says, why should I give it to you? Where is does your KYC provide for that? The answer is, there's no place up there for that.
So the way it has happened, and I've been part of this process, is that even for depository participants, as like we did it for broker, we had already requested that the central depository is the party who is required to report. Because they have all the information. Unfortunately, it's not flown through, and we've got a small exemption which is only for brokers, which is currently in the investment entity category. Practically, I agree with you that these are the concerns, and unfortunately, they have remained unresolved. The only way to maybe resolve is, again, maybe the forum is to go back to the CBDT and clarify a few things, and hope the FAQs that is being talked about has few answers around it. But if we do not have certain information, for example, TIN, which is not available in the system, or place of birth, which is not available in the system, there are leeways in the rules. It says, okay, if you don't have it, don't report. That's the rules say. That's what the rules say. If you don't find it in your system, it's okay, don't report. These are common for both. And the reporting form is the most comprehensive form which any country would have actually come out with for these purposes. India is the largest form, I guess. So, and we are still awaiting the Excel utility for reporting. That's another challenge. maybe it needs a separate discussion altogether.
Ideal situation if depository report करे सारे DPs को छोड़ो यार, क्या काम करेगा?
No, I think, Uttamji, what the problem is when you have multiple, you have a single PAN number. Right now, the depository also sends it to the customer with the DPs held in 5 this thing, but it's a common thing. So already there's confusion. So if a customer wants, he'll keep 4 crores in 5 DP accounts, and he'll escape that large thing, and then you'll have actually the depository reporting as a large customer. So you're going to have a lot of the issues coming up.
In fact, a point in your favor, if you look at the definition of custodian institution, if somebody holds on behalf of others, right? In case of demat environment, it is a depository which is holding on behalf of others.
Exactly.
In the books of the company, the registered owner is the depository and beneficiary owner is someone else. We are agents, तो हम तो custodian institution नहीं है. I mean, ठीक है, this we can say, but in all the meetings, 5-6 meetings of the committee which drafted rules, the understanding is clear about DP are the custodian participants. And again, if the spirit is, duty कौन कर सकता है? जो client से deal करता है, जिसके documents client के documents जिसके पास हो. So in the case of DPs, we deal with the clients and all the documents lie with us. We may be loading it to the KRA, but we don't load all the data to KRA. There's a part A, there's a part B, and a part C for DP. So, it's a bit of a stretch, but I believe one of the large accounting firms have gone on record in some function where they said that DPs are not custodial institutions. किस basis पे मुझे पता नहीं, लेकिन ऐसे लोगों ने बोला भी. Again, I find it difficult to support. But as BSc Lucas firm, I don't know. We will consider pitching to get
Have you
DPs
considered, when you're pitching this, are you considering the depository law which was enacted? Because that's very clear. Categorical, yeah, which is categorical of who is responsible in this whole process. That is the depository and not the DP.
Yeah. DP is the agent of the depository.
Exactly.
The law is clear.
Right.
But this thing flows from international laws. दिक्कत ये है, अगर देसी law में कुछ बोल ही देते हैं तो ये book सिर्फ में मारते मारे.
Isn't there a way where we can put this cart before the horse problem which we're having right now? First get the depository put first, then the DP, and then the customer. I mean, we are just because we are available, everyone just bamboos us.
Anyway, offline. So any other queries on registration?
If not registered, what is the course of action?
What are the implications?
We have followed the guidance given by one of the leading accounting firms. Having followed whatever this thing, we feel that we have to get ourselves registered. Question number 1, how to go? Question number 2, is it like getting registered under Service Tax Act? Where it is compulsory that you should, whether you have done the business or not, you have to get yourself registered. If you have not done the business, fine will return. What is this?
So, there are no penalties as such in research right now. The guidance note is also, guidance note also is silent on. Generally, the guidance note would have prescribed the lump sum penalty if any, but that 100 rupees thing is still there. So, the best course of action is the way you just mentioned: register, and if nothing is reportable, file an annual report. That will save you another grace because you will have a number to show to other financial institutions whom you are dealing with. For example, you as a broker would have the bank account somewhere. That bank will certainly come back to you and ask, are you a participating financial institution or not? And if you are, please give me your GIN. And just having that registration number saves a lot of efforts than explaining and giving a declaration why you are not a participant, why you are not a financial institution.
We have registered under FATCA, under income tax now, and we have reported this by this whatever deadline. But now, once the things are clear, like whether we have to register or not, whether we have fallen under this category, can we hold that registering under GIN?
Okay, so practically
Because under FATCA income tax, that GIN number is optional.
that registration
Once that
is cancelable. One, that is one. Maybe as to put on records, you may write that's just an offline suggestion, but you may write a letter saying why you cancel the registration, why you believe you are not a financial institution. That's the only course of action.
I am talking about the GIN number,
right?
Like we have registered under FATCA.
Okay, we already have the GIN.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
no. We have registered under FATCA under that
Income tax portal.
and that it has a that GIN number optional in that,
Right.
that registration. So now whether we can hold getting registered like taking the GIN number once the things are clear, that once that FAQ comes, after that if the things are clarified whether we are reporting and we are required to register or not.
Right.
Can we hold getting that registration? I mean,
Hold
we are
in the
already
sense-
registered under income tax.
May I repeat your question? आप ये कह रहे हैं कि इनकम टैक्स में रजिस्टर कर लिया, जिन ऑप्शन था तो जिन डाला नहीं, अभी सब कंफ्यूजन चल रहा है, होगा नहीं होगा, तो अभी जिन अभी नहीं लेता तो चलेगा क्या? बाद में देखते हैं.
Yes, that is what I wanted to ask.
So if you are impacted, the first question that the financial institutions you are dealing with, just like I just gave an example, आप कोई बैंक से डील कर रहा है, then उनको आपको जिन नंबर देना पड़ेगा to prove that you are a participating financial institution. वो आपका इनकम टैक्स का रजिस्ट्रेशन से बनने वाला नहीं है. वो ना वो उसको प्रूव कर सकते क्योंकि आपको कोई नंबर तो दिया हुआ नहीं है, स्पेसिफिक नंबर तो दिया हुआ नहीं है. So at least for FATCA purposes, you will have to have a GIN, which GIN will also available on the IRS website for any other financial institution to review. So that is a basic requirement in my view, and you will have to take it if you are impacted.
एक और one more point of what you were saying, nil return. So the way I read the rules, suppose I am a custodial institution who doesn't have a single NRI client. I'm an Indian financial institution और मेरे खाली 5 client हैं, suppose, and I'm not taking shelter the local client base because and I'm doing one activity which falls under financial institution. Suppose I'm a bank. So let's cut out the complication. I'm a bank. I opened a new bank and I've got 5 account holders. All 5 are individuals. Do I need to register or do anything? मुझे मालूम है 5 non-resident. And I'm not taking the local client base shelter. Assuming it's not there. My reading of the rules is we have to register. If you are doing a business of financial institution, you have to register. After registering, you find that you don't have any reportable account. You file a nil return. But register on the income tax website you have to if you are a financial institution falling in any of those 3 categories and not falling in any of the exemptions. So if you say I am a broker who falls under the category of investment entity, जो boss कर रहे थे, if you are convinced, if you don't register, it's okay. But if you say I am a financial institution who does FI work, who doesn't fall into any category, लेकिन NRI काम ही नहीं है क्यों register करूँ? My reading is you have to register FI line. Specifically लिखा हुआ है rules के अंदर. I hope that kind of gives some feedback.
Basically, doing the registration has no harm. You can always go ahead and say, okay, there is nothing to report. There is no harm. It only shows that, okay, you are doing your bit to comply with the due diligence and monitoring requirement. Of course, if whenever called for, you need to back up with the relevant documentation and the efforts that you put into complete the due diligence, that's a different story. But at least it will give you a peace of mind that, okay, I've filed. There are no further questions asked. At least until 2 to 3 years, wherein this entire law is settling out in various countries. Other countries are agreeing to CRS mandate. Till that time, you will have no worries, in my view.
There is some mutual funds, I know may not be part of this forum speak, but some mutual funds have written to us to say you certify or get your clients to self-certify on the web. give a FATCA registration number to that client and then send you an SMS saying thank you for registering. Does that mean that we will also, if a mutual fund has to do it for all its resident clients, then will a broker have to do the same for all its resident clients that they do not, that FATCA does not apply to them? Yes.
Very good question. In fact, if you recollect, go back to this discussion, I just mentioned that, for example, an individual has come to you and onboarded as a resident individual, and he goes to US or UK for a job or other business purposes and becomes a tax resident of UK or US technically, as per the tax laws. Then he is a non-resident for FATCA and CRS as well. Okay, that means today you may not know really whether he still continues to be a resident. That means you have to go for a self-declaration, a fresh self-declaration saying that I am still a resident.
So therefore you don't know who it is. Therefore you have to do from A to Z. That is what it will boil down to. Is what
Yes.
my belief is.
Yes, it is. It does.
Now I have another question. There are people who work for ship, like a ship. His tax status is always
Yes.
Indian.
True.
Depending on where his company is registered, I presume.
Right.
I'm not too good on tax, but now what happens to him? Where do we have the, what happens to
Okay.
that?
So very frankly, sir, the onus of the declaration is on that individual and not on you. Okay. So he has to check with his tax consultant about his tax status. As far as your institution's job or the action is concerned, you just need to ask a few questions to him, to which he needs to answer. Where do he get the answer from is none of it. Whether those answers are right or wrong is also none of your business. If he is giving a particular declaration in the required format and you have that signed document with you as part of the documentation for due diligence, that is sufficient.